You, during the morning's tour of the exhibition, talked about precedent, and I remember when you started talking about your shop girl, there was a earlier 18th century reference also to women who worked as milliners and the sexual boundaries. So have you thought of exploring these two different worlds of women working in the trade?
I'm very, very interested in the antecedents. My book is focused on the second half of the 19th century, so but ideas about the grisettes from the first half, the sort of fashion worker of the first half of the 19th century, do inform expectations of the demoiselle de magasin or shop girl of the second half. And there is a version of the demoiselle de magasin, as I mentioned in my talk, from the 1840s. But there really is an evolution and a sort of shift in the understanding, and so I want to point to that heritage, but also sort of point out how different she was as a figure in the later part of the century.
I was really fascinated by some of the parallels between your work and the work I did on the history of fashion models, and wondered if you came across them in your travels. And my sense was that there was a mixed notion of shop girls and models. Kind of people didn't really get the difference between them, but there was of course a difference. But I was just interested in some of the parallels. Did you see any of that as you went by, focusing on what you were focusing on?
I mean, the mannequin does come up, and she is an interesting figure as well. It is a possible future type to include in my work. Not currently a focus of my research.
That wasn't your subject, but
no, I do think, like I said, in her fashionability and in her income, she had access to the knowledge and the goods in order to be the desirable Parisienne. But I found, and perhaps will contradict me, that the expectations about her class and about her sort of respectability were somewhat different. The demoiselles de magasin were sort of, they contrasted them oftentimes in literature with the mannequins who were...
The mannequins were seen as fair game.
Who were more sexually available.
The mannequins were,
right? The mannequins were, yes.
That's what I was wondering, yes. Interesting.
Is there any... the demoiselles de magasin were not only housed in the topmost part of these huge department stores and expected to be back by midnight. Is there any legal paper, for instance, that says, okay, my daughter's going to be working for Printemps. You guys are obligated to take care of my kid and make sure she's in bed by midnight. Are there any remnants of sort of paper contracts by middle class and working class people who gave the protection of their daughters to these great big shopping centers?
The discussions around them are very paternalistic, and the shop keepers or the department store owners do sort of take on a fatherly role oftentimes in protecting their girls. But it's a great avenue for future research. This is something I've only been working on for a couple of months.
Have you seen any legal papers?
But I have not. So I have not delved into legal papers. But I will think about that to see if there are any such documents. But it's true that they really did they were sort of in loco parentis. They were operating as if these adult women, because I didn't mention this in the talk, but demoiselles de magasin were often older than a lot of the other fashion workers. They didn't typically start working in the stores until they were at least 17. So they were often not children in the way that some fashion workers, did begin quite a bit younger. So they technically were adults, but they were treated more like children.
Thank you, everybody, for your beautiful talks. I have many questions, but maybe for Ariane. So just very naively, when were pockets internalized, and when they are internalized into the garment, is there a difference in the discourse and around them and what they represent for women?
That's like the question of the birth and the death of the pocket from the time pocket is a very difficult question. And I think what we have found is that instead of seeing fashion as a succession of things, one thing sort of superseding another, when we try to see things in context, and when you look at objects and you look closely and you look from that perspective, you see that time pockets kind of co-inhabited with other types of pockets. The integrated male style pocket actually existed in 1690. I don't think I showed it, but there's a set of doors in the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is really famous, called the Clapham doors, and they're a set of a male and a female door with all their clothing, and it's very dateable, everything's perfect, matching and everything, and she has a petticoat with a pocket and a towel pocket at the same time, so that one is not necessarily the opposite or the successor of the other. But saying that, say from the second half of the 19th century, integrated pockets start appearing more in women's clothing, male style clothing, as the fashion trade formalizes more, dressmaking formalizes more, and kind of copies tailors' techniques. And tailors had been trained into integrated pockets because that's what they did for men. But as they do, pockets never find really a stable place in women's garments. So they kind of hover. Usually it's one pocket, and it's going to be, women complain about how integrated pockets are awkwardly placed. So there's going to be in the bustle, so you sit on whatever you have in your pocket, or it's going to be in the hand, so you have to kind of contort yourself to try and get your thing in your pocket. And there is this kind of transition period, we're talking about transition this morning, where things co-inhabit, but the sort of male style pocket doesn't really find a place. And this is when women start complaining about not having pockets, which is like a discourse that we have today, was when they had time pockets, and that was the kind of established way of wearing pockets. Nobody complained about women's pockets being inferior. It's not because they were detached that women said, oh, why can't I have pockets? This is a discourse, why can't I have pockets like men, that you start getting really with the suffragette movement at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, like around 1914, you have a wonderful novelette called If I Were a Man, and it's a woman who wakes up as a man and has to live the day as a man, and relishes the fact that she's going to be able to explore all these pockets, and she's going to have her own money, and she's going to have tickets, but this is really very much sort of a modern concern.
I was thinking about the fanny pack, how everyone today wears their fanny pack, and it's just like the pocket.
They're coming back.
Yeah.
Well, I had somewhat of a follow-up question that was so fascinating. You talk about the pocket. So I was wondering, at the turn of the 19th century, when the dresses are really narrow and they're not made with the pocket slit at the side, how are they accessing the pockets?
Okay, so you have to have access, otherwise it's no use having a pocket.
A lot of those dresses are not made with slits at the side.
Well,
how are they going in there?
Well, what we find,
Or how do you think?
I guess where we see the pockets is with the dress that do have the slits, like in the doll's kind of set of clothing where there's kind of a matching accessories and they go together, or the prints. But there's also written documentation, like there's a diary where it's a young woman and she's writing it in 1800, and for instance she says she has parents had visited, she's a young lady in 1800, so presumably she is fashionable, or she wants to be fashionable, but she has parents have visitors, so she decides, because it's the fashion, to discard her pocket for the night just to have the figure, but she still has a pocket. Now, how she accessed it, and whether you had sometimes dresses with no pockets because you just wanted to be the fashionable silhouette. But in other occasions, you had a dress where you could access pockets. I guess that's very difficult because women don't leave records that precise. Oh, I changed my dress to have pockets. But we do know that a woman could discard pockets for the night. It didn't mean she stopped using pockets.
I had just another comment that was when I also work at a gallery and we do a catalog every year of some of our pieces, and a few years ago we had a dress from the 1840s, so the very pointed waist and cartridge pleated skirt and very full. So I was looking at a lot of fashion periodicals from the 1840s and came across two different similar attitudes towards, by which time you often have an interior pocket on one or both sides, and this dress did have one on the right side. That in the English periodicals, this is 1842, 44, like that, they're talking about pockets, and it seems to be fine, people are fine with pockets. And in the French, it said, the reference was that by putting your hand into the pocket, said, it's such a vulgar gesture. So there was that too, and I was wondering if you've come across anything like that. I mean, the idea of going into the interior of your garment towards your groin, or I don't know. I mean, it was clearly, even though, the dresses had pockets, the idea was you really wouldn't, that would not be a gesture that you would make in public because it was still considered too vulgar.
Yeah, you see that in satirical plates. Unfortunately, there aren't any satirical plates of women actually putting their hands in their proper pockets, but you have masculine women wearing, for instance, a riding dress which did have pockets, and you see them, one of the things is their bodily language and the fact that they will put their hands in their pockets, and that is seen as vulgar because masculine, because not proper. But yes, I think the gesture of putting the hands in the pocket is still, even maybe probably today, is still gendered.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, what were some of the, all of the things that the women put in their pockets?
Sorry, I didn't.
What things did women put in their pockets?
Well, ducks and money, all kinds of things. Money is obviously a big thing, and they could carry quite a lot of money. They just, often the women's pocket served as the kind of portable bank of the family because they had nowhere to put their bank, deposit banks. And it was wrongly seen as safe in accommodation that was often shared, so you had no real way of guaranteeing the security of your things unless you kept it close to the body. And at night, you took your pockets off and put them under your pillow. And this is something that women say it was under my head, it was under the bolster, it was under the pillow, as we still do when you take a night train, probably. People take night trains here, in Europe we do, where you're going to be traveling and you're going to have your valuables under your head. But they put all kinds of things.
Smelling
By the 1950s, a pocketbook was really a handbag. When did the nomenclature of le carnet de poche, of the small book rather, you would have in your pocket, become transmuted into a handbag? Do we know?
I don't use the word pocketbook as a handbag because I learned English in England. So I say handbag and not pocket, but I know in America you say pocketbook for a handbag. In the 18th century, a pocketbook can be two things. It can be either the small almanacs, a kind of periodical that's kind of a diary with fashion plates and useful information, but it's also used as a kind of, in a way, a wallet, a kind of little purse that you can put papers, like bills, paper money, or letters. The word has the two meanings. Whether or not this is what becomes the handbag or the pocketbook, I don't know.
Thank you.
So, Sylvie, I also have questions for you. Several, in fact. Thank you for a beautiful, beautiful presentation. I was wondering, first of all, are there excellent examples of this beautiful muslin that exists in collections, or is it so fine that they've disintegrated over time? what is do these remain in fashion after the 16th, 17th, 18th century? Is there a longer fashion for them? And is there kind of a democratization? I mean, you say that it's like 3 questions in one, I'm so sorry. But you say, a fabric that's going to take 2 months to sew is obviously incredibly expensive. The examples that you showed were from, the royal court. Is there a democratization that occurs at some point?
Yeah, so the 3 questions. So the first question is no, we don't have that I know of. I mean, there are very few even, of the finest silk textile that we can date to the 17th century Mughal court. In part that's because the collections are entirely dispersed in the 18th century. But the earliest I know of fine courtly muslin garments are 19th century. What's really amazing too is the whole chain of ecology to production to the objects themselves. So there's a certain kind of reed that is used in the loom and that is threaded with very, very, very fine pits to the comb is very, very fine on the loom, and so even the makers of that can't imagine how how difficult it must have been to make the loom to have the thread counts that we assume were then. And then the ecology of it, the species of cotton is now extinct, and that goes extinct in the sort of early 20th century. And so you already have a sort of language of disappearance in the 19th century. Then the question about how long this remains in fashion, it does remain in fashion through the 19th, 20th century, but the translucency is a value that you see in paintings of the earlier part of the 17th century. Then things become more opaque, they're decorated, they're more like what we think of as European export chintz with small sprigs of flowers, then this very plain but very luminous white fabric. So it does sort of, the very, very thinnest ones as a sort of sole body color covering go out of fashion, I think to some extent in the mid-17th century. There are numerous reasons for that. Then the question of democratization I think is really interesting because the object muslin fabric is the main export of Bengal. It's being sent to Ottoman lands, it's being sent to Iran, it's being sent to Europe, but the grades at which it's made are variable. And so, as I mentioned, there is this very, very finest grade of the muslin that is entirely reserved for the royal family. But the royal family is huge, and so the entire tax of Bengal in the 16th, 17th century is paid in cotton cloth. And it's said that the women change their muslin garments 5 or 6 times a day, and so and discard the ones. So maybe there was a secondhand market in discarding muslin. But yeah, it's very restricted.
These fine woven air fabrics, which we see in your images worn right on the person.
Yeah.
Presumably in those climates with that kind of heat, perspiration, all cleanliness of the garment must have been a revolution.
Absolutely.
Is there writing of, the development of the lady's maid or the gentleman's, constantly washing and cleaning?
There's an entire class of, I think of them as artisans, of washers and bleachers. And sort of every village has their washermen, but I think that what the Europeans found in the 17th century when they started trying to get a lot of cloth bleached white and then made for export was that there were these existing huge populations of washers and bleachers that apparently, according to European accounts, also didn't exist in Iran. And so you have to bring your huge store of clothing if you wanted to keep your underwear white.
As far as the economy is concerned of Muslim weavers, was there a stratification of middle class, lower class, and worker types of Muslim, but then the royalty and aristocrat? Did it divide itself up?
For the weaver populations themselves?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't really know much about the workshops where the finest textiles were made. But there are certainly different communities of weavers that are grouped by religion, by caste. There's a right-handed and left-handed weaver castes. There's a huge diversification of weavers and of stratification. We have a few upward ignorant who have patronized a dyer, a very old dyer who was said to be going insane. He gave him a lamp now. So they were very, the Mughals were very invested in their artisan workshops. But we don't know much about, especially because it was being made in Bengal and being sent, there wasn't this sort of direct control that this very well-documented empire would have its own cloth dyers and weavers.
And the affordability would vary according to class as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and the daily records, the quarterly records I've looked at for the region of Rajasthan, you get every day, they're getting huge numbers of textiles and they record the exact price for these very fine distinctions and getting them from across India.
Just continuing on with the Mughal questions, could you speak to, I mean, if you know from your research a bit before the Mughals got there, sort of like, were they adopting habits that were already in place with the Rajputs and that it had these royal connotations? Were these more undergarments before them, or were they signs of power and nationality before the Mughals? Like what?
So that's a great question. So they were adopting, so the drama that they do adopt comes from a Mewari Chadha garment. So there is definitely a Rajput lineage to this garment. But then you can also see, I flashed through it, but the Afghan rulers, so there are many other, as you know, many other Muslim rulers who predate the Mughals in India, who had also adopted some variants of this dress, but the very, very fine translucency you don't see that in painting as much as painted more opaquely. So,
Do you have a last question? So thank you very much.